Let's talk about these and a whole lot of other developments. Richard Haass, President Emeritus at the Council of Foreign Relations. And Richard, I really appreciate you being with me. There is so much to talk about. But I want to focus first on the issue between Hamas and Israel. There was the President of the United States said just a couple of days ago that if all the hostages weren't released by this next Saturday, all hell could break loose. How do you see that tactic? And it seems as though Hamas may be saying, well, we're going to be releasing some of the hostages on Saturday after they had expressed doubts.
They probably will. The Israelis are having special meetings prepared to resume military action as soon as the weekend. My guess is the first phase of this agreement will continue to happen. By the way, a lot of prisoners will be released. The numbers are far in that direction. And then the question is what happens next? Phase 2 gets more complicated because you need complete Israeli military withdrawal. You would have to have an open-ended ceasefire. I think that's I'm more skeptical of that, Jose. And I think Hamas may decide they're not going to be the problem. Maybe let Israel be the problem because there are still real issues of difference between Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government.
And then you have the whole issue of Gaza and what happens in Gaza going forward. The President of the United States also throwing out this idea, it seemed out of the blue for many, of the United States having the United States Authority take the Gaza Strip and redevelop it and move up to 2 million Palestinians from there. How does that play?
Well, the short answer is that's not going to happen. But what's interesting is that the other possible explanation for Hamas showing a little bit of flexibility in the hostage exchange is the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Saudis, and others are talking about how to respond to this Trump proposal that none of them wants, none of them likes. And it's quite possible they told Hamas, let's keep the focus on this. And let's keep the focus on what happens and come up with an alternative, if you will, to mass deportation. Let's come up with a governance and security and political proposal for Gaza. And my guess is that's where Hamas and the rest of the Arabs are going to be going.
Why has this not been considered or talked about before?
This being
the pan-Arab talks have been going on, but this specific issue is something that nobody had talked about before.
Well, there'd been a little bit of talk. Obviously, the Saudis had said, if you want us to normalize with Israel, we need a day-after plan. We need something about a Palestinian state. I think what happened is the Trump proposal, though, scrambled the eggs completely. You saw the discomfort of the Jordanian king when he was in the Oval Office the other day. He said he wants to talk to his Egyptian counterpart. So I think that's what's happening, is that the Trump introduction of this outside idea has changed the political dynamics, and I think the Arabs basically have come to the point of view, you can't beat something with nothing, so I think now they want to come up with something in a hurry.
Richard, the importance and the significance of Saudi Arabia in all of this, there was clearly discussions, talks underway before October 7th between Saudi Arabia, Israel. Certainly the United States, the Biden administration was involved in that. All these things changed afterwards, but the importance of Saudi and also the historic importance of Egypt, which, if you look at it, really doesn't seem to play any geopolitical importance, but its history certainly gives it. And then the King of Jordan as well.
Look, Egypt was the first Arab country to establish peace with Israel. It's about a quarter of the Arab world in terms of demography.
Right.
It's lost, though, a lot of its political weight to the Saudis and others who have the economic power. Saudis also have the holy places of Islam. And in some ways, they've taken over leadership to the extent it exists in the Arab world. The UAE also has a big role. Jordan's important simply because it's next to Israel. It's probably, 60% Palestinian now. It was the second Arab country to establish peace with Israel. And I don't think the Israelis want to destabilize either Jordan or Egypt. So in some ways, they're a little bit uneasy with some of these threats of deportation because of what it might do in the neighborhood. So again, I think what's so interesting about the Trump proposal is not that it's going to happen, is what it might set in motion in response to it.
Do you see any reason to be optimistic in this?
Words like optimism in Middle East rarely get uttered in the same sentence or paragraph. Look, I think, though, there are some reasons to be optimistic. The military situation in the region has so shifted, given the weakening of Hamas, the weakening of Hezbollah, the disappearance of the Syrian regime.
Iran being so effective.
Iran. So I think there's real diplomatic openings with Iran to maybe get a nuclear deal. President Trump has talked about that on more than one occasion, what he calls a verifiable nuclear agreement. And second of all, there ought to be possibilities on the Israeli-Palestinian front again, for the reasons we're talking about. If people don't like the Trump proposal, and I think for good reason, Hamas is weakened militarily, Iran is weakened, there's an opening here. And the real question, I think, is whether Israelis are willing to seize it and whether you can find Palestinians, enough of them, who are willing to stand up and offer an alternative to the violence and terror of Hamas. So there is, optimism maybe is too strong a word, possibilities, absolutely.
Richard Haass, it's great seeing you. I thank you very much for being
Thanks,
with
Justin.
us this morning.